National Real Estate Exam Practice Questions 2026 Licensing Test Prep. Flashcard 1. A property owner has decided to do some landscaping work on his yard. He has planted a tree surrounded by some flowering shrubs. The tree and shrubs are an example of think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is improvements. Flashcard 2. A property owner has a waterfront lot on a stream. He has the right to use the water from the stream. What is this right called? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is riparian. Flashcard 3. A tenant is aware that his lease will expire at the end of the month. He has begun to disassemble his display cabinets and shelves. Which of the following statements about this is true? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the tenant can take these as they are trade fixtures. Flashcard 4. A seller is attending the closing on his property. The title company has discovered an unsatisfied M&M lien on the property. Which of the following is the most likely reason for the lien? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is plumbing work that was completed but never paid for. Flashcard 5. A listing agent went to inspect a seller's property hoping to list it for sale. The seller told the listing agent that his neighbor's satellite dish trespasses on his property. This is an example of think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is encroachment. Flashcard 6. A father gives his son a life estate on a property. The son leases the property. The tenant dies. What happens to the property? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is it goes back to the son until he dies. Flashcard 7. A man leaves his second wife a life estate in their home, after which the property goes to his children from his first marriage. The children think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is our remainder men. Flashcard 8. Which of the following statements about an easement is true? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is an easement is a benefit to the dominant property owner. Flashcard 9. P, Q, and R are joint tenants. P wants to sell the property, but Q and R do not. What can P do? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is file a suit for partition. Flashcard 10. A, B, and C are joint tenants. C dies. B sells his share to B. What type of ownership do A and D have? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is tenants in common. Flashcard 11. Under what right can the government change property use from commercial to residential only? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is police power. Flashcard 12. Ownership of the common areas of condominiums is most likely to be think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is tenancy in common. Flashcard 13. What should a buyer do to ensure that his is getting the best title to real property? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is get a general warranty deed. Flashcard 14. Which covenant in a deed guarantees that the owners will not suffer or be disturbed by any claims on the property? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a covenant of quiet enjoyment. Flashcard 15. Excess money at a foreclosure sale goes to think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the borrower. Flashcard 16. After defaulting on a real estate loan, A borrower is able to pay off the loan prior to the foreclosure sale. This is called a think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is right of redemption. Flashcard 17. The required distance between buildings and a federally protected endangered species wetlands is an example of think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a buffer zone. Flashcard 18. A couple purchased a condominium. The complex has an exercise room for all residents. The couple does not use the exercise room and does not want to pay the monthly fee for the use of the facility. What can they do to avoid this fee? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is they must pay the fee as they have a tenancy in common interest in all common areas. Flashcard 19. Which of the following is personal property? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a lease. Flashcard 20. A landlord leased space in his new retail property to an inexperienced business person. Based on location and the type of business, the landlord believes it will be a great success. What type of lease can he enter into with the tenant that will allow the landlord to benefit from the tenant's success? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a percentage lease. Flashcard 21. A buyer has purchased a property and after closing the seller will continue to occupy the property. This is an example of think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is sale and lease spec. Flashcard 22. Your client will be able to qualify for a property they wish to purchase in about 6 months, after they had an opportunity to reduce their consumer debt. They have found a property that they would like to purchase now. What type of agreement can they enter into with a seller that will allow them to occupy the property now and purchase it within the 6 months? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is lease with an option to buy. Flashcard 23. Tenants have signed a 3-year lease on a property. In the 2nd year, the owner dies and his heirs inherit the property. They give the tenants notice to vacate. What is true? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the tenants can stay until the end of the lease. Flashcard 24. A developer decides to build a commercial property in the middle of a residential subdivision. What is required? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a variance. Flashcard 25. A zoning ordinance would affect which of the following? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the concentration of housing in a residential area. Flashcard 26. If a person dies without a will, who receives their estate? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is spouse and children. Flashcard 27. What are the requirements/criteria for real estate to have values? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is demand, utility, scarcity, transferability. Flashcard 28. What principle of value defines the most important factor for appraisal? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is highest and best use. Flashcard 29. What approach would an appraiser most likely use to value a residential rent house in a neighborhood where a majority of the homes are leased? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is income approach. Flashcard 30. A licensed broker is advertising that he will perform a free appraisal if you contact him for a listing appointment. He is not in violation of the law. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is if he is a licensed appraiser. Flashcard 31. Which of the following is not an example of functional obsolescence? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is deferred maintenance. Flashcard 32. According to the statute of frauds, which of the following leases must be in writing? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a lease for more than 1 year. Flashcard 33. Your client is an investor who would like to have the right to purchase a commercial tract for $5 million for the next 6 months. What type of contract should he enter into with the seller? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is an option contract. Flashcard 34. A signed sales contract that has not yet gone to closing is think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is executory. Flashcard 35. When does an offer become a contract? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is when the offeree gives the offeror a notice of the acceptance. Flashcard 36. Which of the following statements is true about the duties of an agent according to the common law of agency? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is an agent must treat both clients and customers with honesty and fairness. Flashcard 37. A property manager is hired and signs a management agreement with the owner. At this time, the property manager is think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a general agent. Flashcard 38. A buyer and seller have negotiated a contract on the seller's property with a closing set for June 14th. Time is of the essence. On June 12th, the listing agent calls the buyer's agent and tells him the seller will be unable to close on the 14th. The seller can close on the 16th. At this time, what is true? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the contract is voidable by the buyer. Flashcard 39. A licensee is representing a seller in a commercial transaction. The property is under contract and all contingencies have been met. The listing agent learns the State Department of Transportation has authorized the construction of an exit ramp to the interstate, right behind the commercial property. The exit ramp will greatly increase the value of the seller's property. What should the agent do? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is tell the seller and encourage the seller to complete the negotiated sale. Flashcard 40. A listing agent is showing his listing to a buyer customer and notices a problem with the exterior of the property that he missed when he listed the property. What should he do? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is point it out to the buyer as it is a material fact. Flashcard 41. A buyer's agent has accidentally forwarded confidential information about his buyer's financial background to the listing agent. What is true? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the buyer's agent is guilty of negligence and the listing agent must disclose the information to the seller. Flashcard 42. What is the difference between replacement cost and market value? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is depreciation. Flashcard 43. Economic life is defined as. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is years of depreciation. Flashcard 44. An unlicensed assistant gets a call from a listing owner with questions about her contract. What should the assistant do? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is take the information to the listing broker. Flashcard 45. An underage college student signs a lease, then discloses his age to the landlord. What is true? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the contract is voidable at the minor's option. Flashcard 46. A seller comes into the office to sign a contract. The seller is stumbling and smells of alcohol. How do you proceed? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is tell the seller to leave and return another time. Flashcard 47. A high-rise condominium property is advertised as having the most beautiful view of the city. This ad is best described as. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is puffing. Flashcard 48. Which of the following facts about listed property must be disclosed? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is death due to structural defects. Flashcard 49. A lead paint disclosure is required for all properties built before. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is 1978. Flashcard 50. Which of the following statements about lead is not true? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the property owner must remediate the presence of lead. Flashcard 51. Circular is under the administration of. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is EPR. Flashcard 52. Which of the following used in 1978 is both extremely hazardous and friable? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is asbestos. Flashcard 53. Which of the following properties would be the least desirable neighborhood? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is brownfields. Flashcard 54. A seller must keep a copy of the lead paint disclosure he provided to the buyer for. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is 3 years. Flashcard 55. It has been found that mold can develop due to. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is airtight windows and doors found in newer construction. Flashcard 56. General liability insurance will. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is protect a company's assets if someone is injured on company property. Flashcard 57. A condo owner's policy will most likely cover the owner if. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a guest slips in the kitchen. Flashcard 58. A condo complex has liability insurance. This is least likely to cover. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a unit owner's carpet damaged by a broken water pipe. Flashcard 59. Accurate record keeping is the responsibility of all of the brokers. If a broker's computers are stolen, what steps could have been taken to protect records? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is off-site or cloud storage. Flashcard 60. A license holder has just attended a training seminar about technology in real estate and is excited about using social media with her clients. Which of the following statements about social media in real estate is not true? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is an agent with permission to advertise a property on social media does not have to worry about protecting confidential information about the client. Flashcard 61. A sales agent is showing a property. He trips and the house causes major damage to property of the owner. What type of insurance will cover this accident? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is liability insurance. Flashcard 62. Prior to its amendments, the Civil Rights Act of 1968 prohibited discrimination based on think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is national origin. Flashcard 63. An agent working with immigrant buyers must be careful. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is not to steer the buyers to a neighborhood based on the language they speak. Flashcard 64. An agent is accused of discrimination. What will HUD do? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is try mediation followed by a lawsuit if mediation fails. Flashcard 65. A mobility-impaired tenant has leased an apartment in a complex with unassigned parking. He has requested an assigned reserve space near to his unit. What is true? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the landlord must provide an assigned reserve space for the tenant near to the tenant's unit. Flashcard 66. An investor has 15 rent houses. He has hired an agent to lease the houses. Which of the following actions by the agent would not be in violation of fair housing laws? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is refusing to show the houses to anyone over 75 years old. Flashcard 67. Which of the following would not be an operating expense included in the property manager's operating budget? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is mortgage payments. Flashcard 68. Which of the following would be most likely to hire a property manager? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is an association. Flashcard 69. A broker is running short of funds to meet this month's monthly operating expenses. He places a client's earnest money deposit in his business account and uses it to pay his rent. After his next closing, he replaces the client's deposit in his trust account. The broker think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is guilty of conversion. Flashcard 70. Which of the following is not an example of due diligence in a sales contract? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a broker completes a CMA for a buyer client prior to the buyer making an offer. Flashcard 71. A sales agent just obtained a listing. The seller told the agent that she needs to sell the property because she is going through a divorce. What must the salesperson do? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is obtain the signatures of all owners on the listing agreement. Flashcard 72. Wetlands typically contain which of the following? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is navigable waters. Flashcard 73. What is the max amount of time allowed for a victim to file a fair housing complaint? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is 24 months. Flashcard 74. A property manager notices that the building's stucco needs repair. He notifies the landlord and recommends a contractor. The landlord uses the contractor who does not do a good job. The new stucco leaks and mold grows. The tenant becomes ill from the mold. Who is responsible? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the landlord. Flashcard 75. An apartment building owner has renovated and modified several units to be handicapped accessible. Can he advertise this accommodation? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is yes. Flashcard 76. When did the Second Amendment of the Federal Fair Housing Act go into effect? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is March 12, 1989. Flashart 77. What is the purpose of a property management trust account? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is to hold tenant security deposits. Flashart 78. Regulation Z applies to think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is all real estate credit transactions except for commercial loans. For non-real estate transactions, it covers up to $25. Flashart 79. The main purpose of Regulation Z is think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is to notify borrowers of the true cost of credit. Flashart 80. What is a requirement of the CFPB? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is lenders must provide borrowers with a form at the time of or within 3 business days of application. Flashart 81. Which of the following closings would be covered by RESPA 1-4 residential family housing? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a condominium. Flashart 82. When does the buyer under contract for deed get title to the property? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is when the final loan payment is made. Flashart 83. What is another name for contract for deed? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is installment contract. Flashart 84. What department of the government oversees the FHA insurance program? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is HUD. Flashart 85. A buyer is aware that the interest rates should go down over the next few months. What type of loan should he get to enable him to buy now and take advantage of declining rates in the future? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Flashart 86. Which of the following is unlikely to have a negative impact on seller's credit score? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a straight assumption. Flashart 87. In rental properties, increased demand can be the result of. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is high mortgage interest rates. Flashart 88. Which of the following would not be eligible for a VA loan? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a parent or sibling of a veteran. Flashart 89. What is required of a loan servicer before foreclosing on a VA loan? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the VA must be notified before the foreclosure. Flashart 90. Who must be notified to take money out of the trust account in a real estate transaction? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is both buyer and seller. Flashart 91. How is earnest money recorded on the closing disclosure? A. Debit to the seller. B. Debit to the buyer. C. Credit to the seller. D. Credit to the buyer. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is credit to the buyer. Flashart 92. What type of mortgage loan would allow the property owner to borrow additional funds at future dates? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is an HELOC. Flashart 93. A seller has received $225 for the sale of his home. This represents a 20% profit. What did he pay for the house when he purchased it? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is $785. Flashart 94. A seller plans to net $55 on the sale of his property. He must pay a loan balance of $15 including costs at $paid. The commission to the listing broker will be 6%. What is the lowest price the property can sell for to accomplish this? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is $19.08. Flash R95. If an appraiser uses the cost approach to determine the value of a two-story building $120.97 at $20/SQ.FT with $10 in depreciation and a $27.5 in lot, what is the value of the property? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is $2,978,000. Flash Hard 96. Mark purchased a home for and he had an 80% LTV. He has paid off $42 of his purchase mortgage. He is selling the house for $79. How much equity does he have? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Flash Art 97. Maria is planning to buy a house for $200,000. The lender has indicated that he will charge 3 points plus an origination point. Maria is considering the difference between an 80% LTV and a 75% LTV. How much will she save on points if she chooses the 75% LTV? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is $400. Flash Hard 98. An office space is 24 feet long and 27 feet wide with 9 FT ceilings. The owner wants to carpet the office. How many square yards of carpet does he need? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is 72. Flash Art 99. A property is listed for $99.58. It sells for $96. The negotiated commission is 6% and will be split evenly between the selling broker and the listing broker. The selling broker pays his seller's associate 60% of the broker's commission. How much does the selling broker earn? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is $47.82. Flash R100. A developer has 2,178,000 SQ.FT of property. He sells 80% of it for $5.10 an acre. What is the total sale price? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is $5. Flash Art 101. An office building has a potential gross rent of $20,000 per month. It has a vacancy rate of 15%. Yearly expenses for the property total $100. If the owner is earning a 10% rate of return, what is the value of the building? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is $8.98. Flash Art 102. What monthly income will your buyers need to qualify for a $200,000 loan at 6% for 30 years, if lenders are qualifying at 28%? The loan factors is $6.00. Monthly taxes and insurance will be $900. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is $7.5. Flash Art. A seller is closing on the sale of his home on April 23rd. The property taxes have not been paid for this year. The annual tax bill is $2,008. Using a 360-day year, how much will the seller owe for taxes at closing? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is $6. Flash Art 104. An owner sold his house for $2.50. He take back. A take-back is seller financing. The seller receives a note for this amount at closing and will collect this amount over the agreed-upon term of the loan. He paid off his loan of $30 and har paid 5% commission. He had closing costs of $10,000. How much did the seller net at closing? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is $100. Flashcard Audit 5. John is purchasing a lot 25 feet wide and 27 feet deep for $5.65 a square foot plus $15 a front foot. A front foot refers to frontage and is the width of the lot. How much will he pay for the lot? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is $91.75. Flashcard on 106. A sale is closing on June 15th, and the annual property tax bill has not been paid. The house is assessed at $8. The tax rate is $2.50 per day. Using a 360-day year, how much will the seller owe for the taxes at closing to the nearest dollar, and how will this be shown on the CT? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is $4,010 debit the seller / credit the buyer. Flashcard 107. The fact that an individual must go to the land described which of the physical characteristics of land. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is immobility. Flashcard Audit. John and Mary are co-owners of a property. John has 60% interest in the property and Mary has a 40% interest. What type of freehold estate do they have? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is tenancy in common. Flashcard Audit 9. A property is surveyed to determine a legal description. The surveyor works from a point of beginning and measures terminal points and angles. What method of land description is he using? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is meets and bounds. Flashcard Audit 10. Mary and John are married with grown children. Both are intestate. If John dies and Mary becomes the owner of their home, what type of ownership did they have? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is tenancy by the entirety. Flashcard 111. The local government needs your land to build a new high school. They have the right to take your land for the public good. This is called. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the right of eminent domain. Flashcard 112. You have recently purchased property in an area regulated by zoning. It has come to your attention that you have a zoning violation on the property. What should you do? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is request a variance from the zoning board. Flashcard Audit. One of the property owners in a subdivision is violating the deed restrictions. What can the other property owners do to get him to comply? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is seek an injunction from the courts. Flashcard Audit 14. Your property borders a non-navigable waterway and you have riparian rights. You have built a 10-foot pier at the water's edge. How to measure your property? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is to the middle of the waterway. Flashcard Audit 15. Mary, a single woman, has no children. She owns real property and dies intestate. What happens to her real property? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the court will appoint an administrator and it will be distributed to her heirs by the law of descent. Flashcard 116. A property owner has a gas station on his land. The zoning committee changes the zoning to R1. What must the property owner do? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is nothing, as property is automatically considered a non-conforming use. Flashcard 117. A property owner receives a notice that his land is in an improvement district. What does this mean? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is he will receive an additional tax bill. Flashcard 118. A property owner has installed a chain-link fence on his property. He has received an official notice requiring the removal of this type of fence. This fence is most likely a violation of think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is deed restrictions or deed covenants. Flashcard 119. A single property is regulated by building codes, zoning, and deed restrictions. The rules are in conflict with one another. Which must the property owner obey? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the property owner must obey whichever rules are the strictest or most limiting. Flashcard 120. Which of the following conveys title to real property and ensure good title? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a general warranty deed. Flashcard 121. A buyer has discovered a defect in title and has suffered a loss due to the defect. The title company has compensated the buyer for the loss. Subsequently, the buyer is awarded a judgment against the seller. The title company is entitled to a portion of the judgment as reimbursement for the claim it paid. This describes think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is subrogation. Flashcard 122. A landowner wants to sell his property. A title search uncovers a cloud on the title. There is no one available to sign a quitclaim deed to clear up the cloud. What can the owner do? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is pursue an action to quiet title in court. Flashcard 120. Appraisers are most often asked to determine think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is market value. Flashcard 124. A builder is using inferior siding and paint in an effort to construct affordable housing. This would be an example of think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is functional obsolescence. Flashcard 125. A builder is very successful and active in a new subdivision. Homes in the subdivision are selling well, and the builder is making a good profit on the sales. Two new builders arrive and begin to sell in the same subdivision. All experience a lower level of profit. This demonstrates which principle of appraisal. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the principle of competition. Flashcard 126. When measuring gross area, the appraiser measures the. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is under roof. Flashcard 127. Which of the following is the best definition of market value? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is most probable price. Flashcard 128. In preparing an appraisal, which of the following would have the least impact on the appraiser's estimate of value? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is physical deterioration. Flashcard 129. An appraiser has been hired to value a commercial office building that is fully leased. What approach to appraisal will he use to determine his opinion of value? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is income approach. Flashcard 130. What is the least important factor for a license holder preparing a CMA? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the information from expired listings of unsold property in the area. Flashshot Audit 51. An appraiser is using the market data approach to determine the value of a residential property. What is false? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is comparable should not be more than 1 year old. Flashlight Audit 32. What expenses of home ownership can a buyer deduct on his income taxes? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is taxes and interest on his mortgage. Flashlight Audit. Mark has an option to purchase Bob's property. The option expires at the end of the month, and Mark would like to extend the option. What would he need to do? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is pay an additional option fee. Flashlight Audit 34. A buyer has signed an agreement to purchase a property from a seller. He has met all the terms and conditions of the listing. The listing broker has taken the agreement to the seller. The seller has changed his mind about selling and refuses to sign the agreement. What is true? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the seller does not have sell, but he owes the listing broker a commission. Flashlight Audit 35. Mark has an open listing on a seller's property. He had shown the property 3 times to the same potential buyers. Each time, he notified the sellers of the showing by phone. He heard from the sellers that he should no longer show the property as it was sold. Several weeks later, he learned that it was sold to the buyers he brought to the property. What are Mark's rights with respect to a commission from the sellers? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Mark is not entitled to any commission as he did not bring the offer to the sellers. Flashlight Audit 36. The best description of a counteroffer is. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a rejection of an offer. Flashlight Audit 37. Which of the following contracts would be voidable? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a contract with a minor. Flashlight Audit. A buyer and his agent visit a listed property. The buyer loves the property and wants to purchase it. He speaks with the seller, who is at home at the time, and they come to an agreement regarding price and terms. They shake hands on the agreement and the buyer happily leaves the property. His agent should think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is warn the buyer that the verbal sales contract is unenforceable. Flashlight Audit 9. Which of the following terms is used to describe a situation where a buyer and seller agree to terminate a contract? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is mutual rescission. Flashlight Audit 4. A seller's property is listed for $99.90. A buyer makes an offer for $99. The seller offers for $92.85. The buyers have not responded to the counteroffer. The sellers receive another offer for $3.95. They would like to accept this new offer. What is true? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is they can accept the new offer, but only after withdrawing their counteroffer. Flashlight Audit 41. A broker owes customers. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is honesty and fairness. Flashlight Audit 42. What are an agent's duties to his principal? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is reasonable care, obedience, loyalty, disclosure, accounting, and confidentiality. Flashlight inquiry. An agent has acted without authority to do so. His principal has found out about the actions and accepted them. What kind of agency does this describe? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is agency by ratification. Flashlight Object 44. Broker B has signed a buyer representation agreement with his clients. As a buyer's agent, he must disclose all of the following except think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is his buyer's ability to make a higher offer. Flashlight Audit 45. A broker has written permission to represent both the seller and the buyer as a dual agent. Under these circumstances, which of the duties of the agent would be the easiest for him to fulfill? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is accounting. Question line 46. A property at 123 Main Street has been listed by Mary, a seller's license holder at ABC Realty, for several weeks. Last week, Mary died. What effect will Mary's death have on the listing agreement? The correct answer is option E. Flashlight Audit 47. Which of the following is not her duty of an agent? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Old Car Trust. Flashlight Audit. A signed employment agreement is necessary to think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is sue for commission. Flashlight Audit 49. A listing agent would probably not disclose. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is death on the property due to natural causes. Flashlight Audit. Which of the following deaths on the property should never be disclosed? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is death due to HIV/AIDS. Flashlight Audit 51. Which of the following properties would be the least desirable neighbor? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is brownfields. Flashlight Audit 52. How long must the seller or landlord keep a copy of the lead paint disclosure? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is 3 years. Flashlight Audit 50. All of the following are hazardous substances that a license holder should be aware of except. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is acrylic paint. Flashlight Audit 54. Which of the following is the best example of puffing? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is I think this is the best floor plan available from this builder. Flashlight Audit 55. A buyer's agent has helped a buyer to find a home. The buyer has expressed concern about the possible presence of radon. What should the buyer's agent do in this case? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is recommend an inspection for hazardous materials. Flashlight Audit 56. A chemical manufacturing company purchases a plant. After closing, they discover that the previous owners had spilled hazardous materials on the land. According to Circular, who is liable for the cost of the cleanup? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is both the new owners and the previous owners. Flashlight Audit 57. Who is responsible for providing a lead paint disclosure? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the seller. Flashlight Audit 58. A property has lead paint in the interior and on the exterior. Which of the following statements is true? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is, the seller has no duty to remediate lead, simply to disclose it. Flashcard on 59. A license holder has just taken a class on networking and marketing through social media. She is very excited about the possibilities, and he's established Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Pinterest accounts. She is also writing a blog. She has decided to market a new listing on these sites. The property has been built to resemble an antebellum mansion. How can she advertise the property? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is antebellum-style mansion. Flashcard on 60. Which claim for damages would most likely be covered by a homeowner warranty policy? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a furnace that breaks down a few weeks after the buyer move in. Flashcard on 61. Under a new construction homeowner warranty policy, which of the following would not be covered? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the air conditioning unit. Flashcard 162. Which of the following statements about flood insurance is false? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is flood insurance is not necessary if a property owner has a comprehensive homeowner's property. Flashcard 163. After several years of selling residential property, a license holder wishes to begin working on industrial sales. He should think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is align himself with a broker or sales license holder who has experience in industrial property in order to learn about and become proficient in industrial sales. Flashcard 164. A property has foundation problems. The seller has painted over them to hide them. He lists his property for sale as is and does not disclose the problem. The listing broker views the property but does not detect any defects. A buyer purchases the property and after closing discovers the problems. Which of the following statements is true? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the broker will be protected by his E&O insurance because the problem was not able to be detected by visual inspection, and the seller misrepresented the property. Flashcard 165. E-signature or electronic signature. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is are valid for parties that have agreed to their use with the consent of the other parties. Flashcard 166. In senior housing communities, at least one person over the age of 55 must be living in what percent of the units? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is 80%. Flashcard 167. A practice of trying to induce homeowners to sell by convincing them that a minority group is moving into the area causing property values to drop is. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is blockbusting. Flashcard 168. The main goal of the aider is the removal of barriers. All of the following are required under aider except to think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is levered door handles. Flashcard 169. According to regulations, which of the following is not a trigger term? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is APRA. Flashcard 170. Which of the following is false regarding the Civil Rights Act of 1968? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a FSBO who owns no more than 4 homes can discriminate when selling a home. Flashcard 171. Which of the following loans would not have a 3-day right of recession? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a loan to purchase a vacation property. Flashcard Audit 72. What form replacing the HUD1 must be provided to the consumer and when must it be provided? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the CD at least 3 days before closing. Flashcard Audit 70. Which of the following does not pledge property as security for a debt? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is note. Flashcard 174. Which of the following instruments is the promise to repay a debt? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is note. Flashcard 175. What is the advantage to the borrower of a VA loan? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the guarantee on the VA loan is free. Flashcard 76. John has a loan with equal regular payments of principal and interest. Long before the debt is satisfied, the balance is due in a payment substantially larger than all the others. This is best described as a think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is partial amortization loan. Flashcard 177. For what group of buyers would the ARM be the least desirable? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is those on a fixed income. Flashcard 178. Where can you expect to find MIP? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is on an FHA loan. Flashcard 179. What is a point? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is 1% of the loan amount. Flashcard Audit. Where does the secondary market get its funds? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is from investors. Flashcard Audit T1. A retired couple is on a fixed income. They own their own home. They are having a hard time making ends meet, yet they do not want to sell their home. What type of loan should they consider? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a reverse annuity mortgage. Flashcard Audit D2. An investor/developer has borrowed money to build a retail shopping center. His lender has provided a very competitive interest rate. However, when the investment property is completed and sold, the lender will collect the amount borrowed plus a % of the developer's profits. What type of loan is this? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is shared appreciation loan. Flashcard Audit. John has leased commercial property and pays rent based on the receipts of his business. This type of rent is referred to as. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is percentage rent. Flashcard IP4. Which of the following would be considered an operating expense by a property manager preparing an operating budget for the owner? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is interior painting of apartments. Flashcard Audit 35. The property management agreement creates what kind of agency? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is general agency. Flashcard Audit 86. Who would use the remedy of forcible entry and detainer? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the landlord. Flashcard Audit 7. The landlord pays the expenses of the property. The tenants pay rent plus utilities. What type of lease is this? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is net lease. Flashcard Audit. When a landlord allows the property condition to deteriorate so much that the tenants are forced to leave, it is called, think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is constructive eviction. Flashcard 189. A couple is moving to a new city and they would like time to learn the city before they purchase a home. What type of lease should their agent recommend? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a periodic tenancy. Flashcard 590. A young couple leases an apartment in an apartment complex for 1 year. During the year, they become concerned about crime in the area and ask for permission to install an alarm system in the apartment. The landlord grants permission. When the lease is up, what happens to the alarm system? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the system stays as it is now, a fixture. Flashcard 191. What type of verbal lease agreement would be enforceable? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a lease for 1 year or less. Flashcard 192. John has a 3-year lease on office space. In the 2nd year, the landlord dies. His heirs inherit the property. They do not want it and they sell it. The new owner wants John to move out. Does John have to leave? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is no, because he has a lease. Flashcard 190. What type of business entity is owned by shareholders but avoids double taxation? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is an S-corporation. Flashcard 194. What is the difference between a general partner and a limited partner? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a general partner has full liability and a limited partner has limited liability. Flashcard 195. A one-on-one relationship between a broker and a client is called. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is agency. Flashcard 196. A license holder sponsored by a broker must have a written agreement. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is to work as an independent contractor. Flashcard 197. A broker has a trust account set up to hold client funds. He has earnest money deposits from several clients in the account at the same time. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is acceptable as long as he has written records. Flashcard 198. Which of the following actions of a broker could jeopardize the independent contractor status of the license holders he sponsors? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is requiring his license holders to work scheduled hours. Flashcard 199. A buyer's agent is working with a buyer to purchase a property. The buyer is concerned about the location of the fence as it appears to be encroaching. What should the buyer's agent do? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is recommend a survey. Flashcard 200. A couple is purchasing a home and ask their agent how they should take title so that if one spouse dies, immediately the surviving spouse will be the sole owner of the property. The license holder should think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is tell them to talk to an attorney because the license holder is not permitted to give advice on how to take title.